The Invisible Thread. Part 2. Ghosts in Armor. 8 hours 42 minutes and 1 second. The scraping in the ventilation stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Raven didn't lower her weapon from the grate. Every muscle in her body tensed to the limit. She heard only her own heartbeat and the quiet, even breathing of Ghost behind her back. Maestro, confirm. Her whisper was a soundless movement of lips, picked up only by the ultra-sensitive microphone in her headset. In response, her earpiece hissed briefly with interference. Then Maestro's voice, stripped of all theatricality, dry and hard. External guests. Alpha Team. Minimum 4. Likely gladiators. They're using our mess as cover. They have their own objective. Do not let them reach the vault. Cypher, do you copy? Upstairs, in the lair above the cleaning company, Cypher yanked a joystick from a port, rolling his chair back from the radio panel. Copy. Go ahead. Layer their comms with our noise, loop any of their transmissions on 5-second repeats of their own past chatter, create the illusion of connection for them, and find their point of entry. Likely the Pearl Street Utility Conduit, Branch 7B. Already on it. Cypher's fingers danced across the keyboard. He activated the software for analyzing acoustic anomalies in the building systems that Maestro had planted for just such an occasion. Yes, there. In the elevator shaft of loading dock number 3. Motion sensors triggered 3 minutes ago, but the signal was drowned out by our own fence. Brian, can you? Brian, the former sapper, was already unclipping a holster with a massive semi-automatic Desert Eagle. His face, scarred by old burns, was impassive. Elevator shaft. So they're already inside the superstructure. Could be on any floor between B2 and B5. 4 of them, you said? Minimum, Maestro replied. They'll have tactical advantage. They know we're here. We don't know their precise location. Raven, new priority. Secure the vault perimeter. Do not engage openly if you can. Avoid it. Use hummingbirds for recon. I'm diverting some resources to track them. The countdown in Hyperion showed 3:15. The sum had passed 55 million. Olivia, still trembling from her failure and the loss of money, noticed something odd. Maestro's voice, which had just been addressing her, cut off mid-sentence. For a second, there was complete, inexplicable silence, without even the background hum of noise. Then the voice returned, but there was agitation. No. Focused rage, meticulously controlled. Something had gone wrong. Their captor had problems, possibly big ones. At that very moment, she saw on her main monitor, over the flickering counter, a barely noticeable line of text. It appeared for a fraction of a second and vanished, like a glitch artifact. But she had read it. SOS signal received. Hold on. Elvis. Tanine. The legendary nickname of Marcus Bowen, head of her cybersecurity department, an Elvis Presley fanatic to the core. He had received her ultrasonic signal, and he was doing something. A new hope, sharp and dangerous, shot through her temples. She wasn't alone. Not entirely. But what could Marcus do? The building was isolated. The police, it seemed, were in the dark. Unless firefighters, the direct wire. If she could have reached the pull station. But no, the drone had destroyed it. But there had to be other sensors. Heat, smoke. You couldn't trigger them just like that. But if you created a heat source. Her gaze fell on the emergency light above her desk. In its base was a small lithium battery. If she short-circuited it, it would overheat. Smoke. A sensor might trigger. It was a risk. The drone might react. Maestro might take more money from her or worse. But the alternative was to sit and watch as her bank, her life, was dismantled screw by screw. As she deliberated, a quiet war was unfolding below. 8 hours, 45 minutes, and 22 seconds. The team, known in narrow circles as the Gladiators, indeed consisted of 4 men. Their leader, Kronos, a name he'd chosen for the ruthless efficiency with which he cut down problems, was studying a holographic schematic on a tablet strapped to his forearm. They were in a technical compartment on level B3, 15 vertical meters from the B4 vault. Our friends have created a perfect vacuum, Kronos said in a voice like grinding gravel. No contact with the outside world, no police. They've drawn all the attention. We, as good Samaritans, will just walk in and take what's coming to us. His team was hand-picked. Wraith, a female infiltration and systems bypass specialist. Sledge, former special forces in charge of forceful solutions. and Zen, a self-taught hacker whose job was to keep Maestro's fence at bay using portable jammers on different frequencies. "I'm jamming their motion scanners in a 10-meter radius," Zen said, his fingers flying over his portable servers panel, "but not for long. Their system is adaptive. We have a 7-minute window." "Plenty," Kronos grunted. "Wraith, take us to branch 7G. It leads straight to the vault antechamber." Wraith, as supple and silent as her namesake, nodded and moved forward, leading them through a maze of pipes and cables. They didn't know their radios were already dead, that their comms were now an echo of themselves, recorded and looped by Cypher. They moved, confident in their stealth, while being in the palm of Maestro's hand. Raven, having received approximate coordinates from Cypher, moved. She didn't wait for them at the vault. She went to meet them, using service stairwells and technical hatches, known only to Ghost and marked on her tablet. She got ahead of the gladiators. Her ambush point was a narrow passage where utility conduit 7G narrowed between two massive water tanks for the server cooling system. The spot was ideal. One way in, one way out, poor visibility. She deployed 2 hummingbirds, one at the entrance to the passage on their side, the second at the exit. She herself perched on a beam under the ceiling, merging with the shadows, her vector aimed from where the guests were to appear. She was a predator, ready to strike. First to speak was Maestro. His voice in her earpiece was as quiet as a breath. "They're 50 meters from you, moving confidently. They have their own hacker trying to create a blind spot. I'm initiating countermeasures. On my signal, their tactical lighting will fail for 3 seconds. Use it." "Roger." 8 hours, 47 minutes, and 10 seconds. The gladiators entered the passage. Wraith led, her carbine with an underbarrel grenade launcher ready. Behind her came Kronos, then Zen with his gear, and Sledge bringing up the rear, turning every few steps to cover their 6. "Nothing visual." "Too tight," Wraith whispered. "Passage is clear. No sensors," Zen confirmed, poking at his device's screen. "Their fence is weak here. They seem focused on the upper floors." At that moment, Maestro pressed a virtual key. The gladiators, headlamps, and weapon-mounted lights died simultaneously. The passage plunged into pitch darkness, broken only by weak emergency glow somewhere in the distance. "Damn!" "Malfunction," Zen cursed. 3 seconds of darkness. For Raven, it was more than enough. She didn't shoot. Instead, she dropped from the beam a small device resembling a hockey puck. It landed on the metal floor right behind Sledge, the last in line, with a dull thud. "What's that?" Sledge turned, already swinging his heavy-caliber rifle around. The puck activated. It wasn't explosives. It was a directional acoustic impulse generator, a next-gen flashbang. The sonic blast, focused into a narrow beam, hit Sledge and Zen, who were closest. For them, it was like a sledgehammer to the head. They collapsed to the floor, stunned, disoriented, with temporary hearing loss and loss of balance. Wraith and Kronos, ahead, got off with only a deafening ringing in their ears. They instinctively scattered, taking cover behind pipe protrusions. Wraith fired a burst into the ceiling, where she thought the attack had come from. Bullets screamed and ricocheted off metal, showering sparks. Raven was no longer on the beam. While Kronos and Wraith fired blindly, using the moment of panic, she descended through a ventilation grate behind them. Her goal wasn't annihilation, but delay and disorganization. She tossed a flashbang toward Kronos, but not a regular one. Maestro had modified it, adding a component that created a dense cloud of irritating, non-lethal smoke mixed with metal particles, causing interference for thermal and radar imaging. The passage filled with a whitish, acrid haze. Only muffled cries from Zen trying to get up and Kronos' ragged breathing could be heard. "Zen, give us some light," Kronos barked, wiping his tearing eyes. But Zen was in no condition. His gear was damaged by the acoustic blast. The gladiators' comms with Maestro were dead, their hacker down, their team split. Kronos' plan, a quick and quiet raid, had turned into a chaotic firefight in the fog. Raven retreated. Her task was done. She had tied them up without killing anyone. Murder would inevitably attract the attention they all wanted to avoid. Now they were a problem, but a contained one. She soundlessly returned to the vault, where Ghost, pale as a sheet, waited by the door. "What was that?" he whispered. "Party crashers. They're bogged down." "Keep working," Raven ordered, taking up a position from which she could control both the vault door and the approaches. She knew Kronos wouldn't back down. A man like that only retreated with the prize or dead. And now he was angry. 8 hours, 52 minutes, and 1 second. Upstairs in Hyperion, the The countdown neared 0:58. The sum on the counter had frozen at $58,450,000. Maestro's voice had also fallen silent. This quiet was ominous. Olivia decided. While Maestro's attention, it seemed, was diverted elsewhere, she acted. Removing her stud earring, the only metal item she had, she deftly, under cover of the desk, short-circuited the contacts in the base of the emergency light. There was a faint hiss, the smell of burnt plastic. A thin stream of acrid gray smoke began to pour from the light's casing. She held her breath, waiting for a reaction. 5 seconds passed. 10. The smoke swirled, rising toward the ceiling. And then, right above her desk, the red light of a smoke detector began to blink. A sharp, piercing wail of the internal fire alarm, a system that operated in its own autonomous loop, sounded. But nothing happened. No gas jets, no action. The siren blared for 10 seconds and fell silent. It had been silenced. Maestro had found and blocked even this channel. Despair, cold and clammy, washed over Olivia. They were in a complete trap. And then her monitor went completely dark. For a second, then it lit up again. But the image was different. It wasn't the bank schematic or the counter. It was the face of Marcus Bowen. Elvis, his balding head, mustache, panic in his eyes. He was in his office on the 27th floor. A video feed. Primitive, packet-based, but a feed. Olivia! Can you hear me? Can you see me? His voice was distorted, choppy, but it was him. Marcus! Yes. I'm here, she exhaled, forgetting caution. Listen carefully. I punched a hole in their fence. A very narrow one on an old data transfer protocol we use for testing. I have access to the cameras in Hyperion. I see you. I see everyone. But I can't do anything with the systems. They're locked at the hardware level. But I found something. The image on the screen changed. It was an old architectural blueprint of the building, a scanned copy of a yellow drawing. Look, Marcus's voice was excited. On level B4, next to the vault, there's a technical niche. It was walled up in the 80s during renovation. But according to these blueprints, a direct connection cable to the Federal Reserve Monitoring Center on Liberty Street runs through there. Not digital, analog. A telephone line, literally copper wires in a lead sheath. It was never disconnected because everyone forgot about it. If you can reach it, you can make a direct call, bypassing everything. Olivia stared at the schematic. The niche was 20 meters from the vault in a dead-end technical corridor. But how do I get there? We're being held here. They have drones, weapons. You can't, Marcus interrupted. But I can see more. Down on B4, something else is happening. Strange movements on the floor pressure sensors. Someone else is down there. Not ours, not security. And wait! His face vanished. Footage from cameras in the utility tunnels flashed on the screen. Vague silhouettes in smoke, muzzle flashes. Olivia froze. There's a fight, Marcus whispered. 2 groups. They're fighting each other. This might be our chance. If you can get to that cable, they'll kill me the moment I move. Not necessarily. Look at the main screen. Olivia shifted her gaze to the large screen in the center of the hall. Where there had been only the counter before, now a map of the building with several blinking dots appeared. One dot, scarlet, was in Hyperion. Another, blue, was on B4 at the vault. And 3 yellow dots, also on B4 but elsewhere, were moving chaotically. The gladiators. I fed this map into their display system, Marcus said, and pride crept into his voice. Maestro probably sees it already and is trying to remove it. But for now, it's there. He knows there are other players. His attention is divided. Olivia, if you're going to do something, do it now. While he's busy with the war in the basement. Count down. 0:21. Olivia clenched her fists. This was insanity. But sitting and waiting for the end was even more insane. She looked at the schematic of the niche on her monitor. Marcus had overlaid a route through a janitorial service elevator located behind the operations hall wall, which in theory had separate power. It should lead straight to B4. I'll try, she said. I'll guide you. And Olivia, be careful. The feed cut. The monitor showed the counter again. 0:15. Olivia took a deep breath. She wasn't a heroine. She was a banker. But right now, her bank, her team, her life were on the line. She stood up. This time slowly, making no sudden moves. She didn't head for the exit, but deeper into the hall toward an inconspicuous door labeled Maintenance. Authorized personnel only. She hoped Maestro, Monitoring the fight on B4 and trying to maintain control of his hack would overlook this movement. The door was locked with an electronic lock. Red indicator. She pulled the handle useless. And then she remembered. Jake, that same traitor shocked by the door, had an RFID cloner fob he used for pranks, opening colleagues' doors. She glanced at him. He was still sitting on the floor, leaning against a desk, his burned hand bandaged. The fob stuck out of his pocket. Under the pretext of helping him, she approached, bent down. "Jake, I need your fob," she whispered. "What for? He controls everything anyway. Just give it." He nodded, his eyes empty. She pulled out the fob, returned to the door, held it up. The lock, to her surprise, clicked green. Maestro, it seemed, had only disabled critical systems, deeming this door insignificant. She entered a narrow, dimly lit closet with electrical panels and pipes, and saw an old, battered elevator with a grilled door. A freight elevator. She pressed the button. Nothing. No power. But next to it was an emergency hatch in the floor, and a ladder leading down. Olivia looked into the dark shaft. Cold and the smell of oil wafted from below. Somewhere down there a quiet war was raging, and she needed to descend right into its epicenter. 8 hours and 55 minutes. The countdown in Hyperion reached 0. On all monitors simultaneously, one word flashed: Finale, and the main event began. Now the virtual tentacles of Maestro's program dug into the very heart of the bank's financial system. It was no longer just draining accounts. He began a process known as unraveling the thread. Using digital keys and cryptographic certificates stolen over the past months, his algorithms began mass initiating transfers, asset sales, closing deposits. Money flowed not into one reservoir, but into hundreds of pre-created wallets worldwide, instantly converted into cryptocurrencies, mixed through tumblers, and vanished into the blockchain labyrinth. This wasn't a robbery. It was systemic liquidation. In the tunnel, Maestro, despite the problems with the gladiators, smiled. His fingers flew over the keyboard, conducting a symphony of chaos. He watched as the numbers for total damage on his custom terminal screen soared to 100, then 200 million. His darknet auction exploded with activity. He wasn't selling money. He was selling access to the flows. A buyer who paid in Bitcoin gained control over one of the outflow routes, like receiving a key to a sluice gate. Risk and profit were distributed. "Brian," he called, "head to the vault. Assist Raven. Time to crack the boxes. I'm giving you remote access to Glacier for 3 minutes. Use Raven's terminal." "En route," came Brian's raspy voice. "Cypher, how's the noise?" "Holding, but I'm picking up strange activity on city emergency service frequencies. Not police. Fire department. Someone pulled a string, Maestro." Maestro frowned. Olivia Rain and her light fixture. He'd noted the sensor trigger but blocked it. However, a signal must have gone out as a false alarm. That could attract attention. Needed to accelerate. Cypher. Generate and send a message to all emergency channels about cybersecurity drills. Signature Forge, the chairman's. Use our voice sample. On it. Meanwhile, Olivia descended the seemingly endless ladder in the elevator shaft. Each step echoed hollowly in the concrete tube. She heard muffled sounds from below. Gunshots, dull, suppressed. Shouts, some kind of crash. She felt she was descending into hell. Finally, she reached the B4 level platform. There was a small door leading to a technical corridor. She opened it a crack. The corridor was empty, lit by dim emergency lamps. The air smelled of smoke and chemicals. Somewhere close, she heard an intermittent, raspy cough. Marcus's schematic showed the niche with the cable should be at the end of this corridor, around a right turn. But between her and the turn was an intersection with another corridor. And from there came sounds. Olivia slipped out the door and pressed herself against the wall, creeping as best she could in her expensive pumps and business suit. She felt utterly unprepared, vulnerable. She approached the corridor intersection and peeked. What she saw was burned into her memory forever. The corridor was full of smoke. A man in tactical gear, Zen, lay in it, not moving. Another, Sledge, sat leaning against the wall, holding his head, his face twisted in pain. And in the center, about 10 meters from her, stood a woman, tall, in black tactical gear, with short dark hair. Raven. She stood with her back to Olivia, her vector aimed in the direction from where, judging by the sounds of a weapon being aimed, Kronos would appear. Wraith apparently had retreated somewhere. Raven was perfectly still, like a statue. She was listening. Olivia saw the tension in the muscles of her neck, the slight tilt of her head catching the slightest sound. And at that moment, a shadow burst from the smoke to Raven's left. It was Wraith. She moved incredibly fast, almost silently, her carbine raised for a butt strike. But Raven seemed to sense it with her skin. She didn't turn. She dropped into a squat, letting the blow pass over her head, and using the attacker's momentum, yanked her by the arm, slamming her into the wall. Wraith hit with a dull groan but didn't drop her weapon. She rolled away, and a short, brutal, silent struggle ensued between the two women. It was a dance of death, where every move was meant to disable or kill. Olivia froze, mesmerized and horrified at once. She realized she had to use the moment. While they were occupied with each other, while Kronos was waiting somewhere, she slipped across the corridor intersection and broke into a run toward her turn. Her pumps clicked loudly on the concrete. She heard a sharp movement behind her, someone's cut-off shout, but didn't look back. She rounded the corner and saw a dead end. And in the dead-end wall, the bricked-up door Marcus had mentioned, it was painted over to match the wall, almost indiscernible. But the outline was visible. Olivia ran up, started feeling the surface. No handle, no keyhole, just a concrete slab. Despair washed over her again. She was so close. And then she noticed in the floor, right against the wall, a barely visible metal hatch cover, about the size of an A4 sheet of paper. She dropped to her knees, trying to pry it open with her nails. It wouldn't budge. She needed a tool. She looked around in panic. In the corridor behind her, the sounds of struggle had died down. Everything had gone quiet. Too quiet. And then her gaze fell on a fire extinguisher hanging on the wall 2 steps away. An old-fashioned one, in a metal casing. She tore it from its bracket. It was heavy. She slammed it against the edge of the metal cover with all her might. Once, twice. The sound of the blows thundered deafeningly in the narrow dead end. The cover gave way. Bent. She managed to wedge her fingers into the gap and tear it off. Underneath was a narrow shaft going down, and in it, a bundle of old, black-wrapped wires. The cable. That very cable! Olivia pulled out her phone. No signal, of course. But she didn't need a signal. She needed a voice. She needed to reach the copper wires inside that cable. But how? She had no tools to strip the wires. In desperation, she hit the cable with the fire extinguisher. The wrapping split, revealing several colored wires. She pulled the Bluetooth earpiece from her ear, broke it open, exposing the tiny contacts. Then, skinning her fingers, she began winding the thin copper threads from the earpiece onto the cable strands, hoping for a miracle for the circuit to close. Suddenly, footsteps sounded from around the corner of the corridor. Heavy, unhurried. Not Raven's, and not Wraith's. Male footsteps. Kronos. He appeared at the end of the corridor leading to the dead end. His uniform was torn, his face scraped and sooty. In his hands he held a pistol with a long suppressor. His eyes, cold and empty, found Olivia. Well, I just said quietly. What do we have here? A runaway sheep. Or maybe another player? He raised the pistol. Don't move. What are you doing with that cable? Olivia froze, clutching her makeshift telephone contraption to her chest. Her mind raced feverishly. She had to buy time. It's a direct line to the Fed, she blurted out. If I call, it won't be police that come, it'll be Federal Reserve Special Forces. You'll have 5 minutes to get out. Kronos smirked, short and soundless. Sweetheart, by the time they figure it out, we'll be long gone, and you won't be here to explain anything. His finger began to squeeze the trigger. And at that moment, from the ventilation grate right above Kronos' head, with a piercing buzz, a hummingbird shot out, but not to attack. It flew right in front of Kronos' face, blinding him with a burst of bright light, and